So it's about 2 a.m. I'm in front of my laptop in my bedroom and I'm calling my girlfriend at the time. We both were studying for an exam that we had the day after, around 7 hours after that time. So it's about 2 a.m. and around 9 a.m. the next day, I need to go and write this exam. That's excluding the fact that I need to wake up, get ready, and then go to school. So I have no time left. I focus on the chapters that I'm trying to study in my textbook. I open and I read every chapter. I practice all the questions. We did this for like 90 minutes, like an hour and a half. And it's really difficult because I'm sleep deprived. It's 2 a.m. I'm not getting any sleep and I'm super sleepy. I'm falling asleep, but I really need to finish all these chapters. Eventually at like 3:30, we called it quits. We closed our laptops and everything and we went to bed. The next day, I wake up and I go to school. I write this exam, right? I did good. I did pretty good in the exam for my sake. It wasn't like the best exceptional grade. But considering that I barely studied and I had shitty sleep, I did okay-ish. I did remember a few things, but like maybe 60% of the questions I knew. The other 40% I did know the answers to. I just couldn't remember, like I knew what question it was, but I couldn't remember the answer. So I just left it blank because I didn't want to attempt it like some bullshit answer. They're like, oh yeah, you should attempt every question. I didn't do that, I just left it blank. This is what happens when you try to cram in the last day of the exam and you procrastinate it for hours and hours. You end up being sleep deprived, you end up not even doing well in the exam. First of all, I'm glad that you want to study and improve your studying skill. There are so many students out there who, first of all, barely study. And even if they do study, they don't actively search out information on like how to improve my studying skill, how can I get better at studying. So you doing this actively shows that you really want to study and improve the studying skill, which is such an exceptional trait to have. You and I have definitely been in this position where we try to cram for this exam because we procrastinated studying for the 2 months that they gave us. So in the last day of the exam, maybe like 18 hours or 20 hours before the exam, we're like cramming everything, we're trying to study every chapter. I want to tell you that that's wrong. I want to tell you that's stupid. Cramming for the exam by studying every chapter is stupid. You need to focus on the 80-20. If you've never heard of the 80-20 rule, the 80-20 rule is basically 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the causes. You might have heard of the 2-minute rule and everything. This is one of them. So basically, the 80% of the outcomes comes from 20% of the causes. So in sales, like 80% of sales come from 20% of the customers, and 80% of your nutrients come from 20% of the food. Like some random stuff you can think of, right? But basically, that's the general rule. You want to focus on the 80-20 chapters, especially if the subject is hard. You really want to focus on the chapters of the subject that either have the most marks, or if all of them are like equal marks or whatever, you want to focus on the hardest ones for you. Those are the constraints. A constraint in business is basically what's holding you back. And in fitness, a constraint could be, okay, you're making an aesthetic body, but maybe your lats are a little bit smaller. Maybe the entire body physique is good, right? But the lats are a bit small. So now you fully focus, you add an extra 2 sets per week or 3 sets per week to hit lats. And maybe your body's good. Then the constraint might be sleep. Maybe you're not sleeping well, so you focus on sleep. The same way, we want to focus on studying the chapter, which is the constraint. And if every chapter is the constraint, we want to focus on the hardest chapters or the highest leverage chapters. If you could only study 3 chapters out of 10, what would you study? Now you're going to get some ideas. When you ask yourself that question, okay, if I could only study 3 to 5 chapters out of the 10 I have, or how many you have, what would I study? And if it's like 5 chapters, what are the 2 chapters I would study? If out of these 5, that would give me the most marks. Or if it's not about marks, what are the 2 chapters that are most difficult for me so I can get it? Because chances are, if there are 5 chapters, right, and you're good at 3 and bad at 2, you wouldn't study the 3 the same way you studied the 2, right? You would most likely study the 2 harder and harder because you already kind of know the 3. So it would be useful for you if you study the 3 less and then put more effort. It sounds like common sense, but you genuinely put more time, more brain points, more brain effort, more like XP points or like skill points into these 2 chapters so that you can get good marks in these chapters when the questions come. This is how you improve. This is how you actually cram. You don't study every chapter, because what happens when you study every chapter? Chances are you don't remember it. Chances are you're staying up cramming, right? So already, because of the sleep deprivation, you're not going to remember much. You agree with this. And then on top of that, when you add every chapter into your brain in the same 24 hours, chances are most of the chapters are going to go in the trash. When you go to sleep for that 2 or 3 hours, it's going to prioritize some chapters and then deprioritize some chapters. The deprioritized chapters are going to be forgotten. You know this yourself. No matter how hard you cram, There are definitely times where you just forgot 50 or 60% of the material you learned. That's because you overloaded your brain. So if you can focus on the main constrained chapters, the next time you want to cram or the next time you study anything or do anything, focus on the constraint. Focus on what's holding you back. Focus on the hard chapters, the 80-20 chapters. And then once you do this and you get really, really good at it, you will actually you won't need to study that much, and you can just study the day before, but then study the constrained chapters. Now, I obviously promote like studying every single day, but then if right now you're cramming for an exam and you're really trying to do this, I promise you, look at the 3 or 4 chapters out of 10. Okay, obviously if there's like 5 chapters, do 2, and if there's 10, like do 3 or 4. Just focus on like the 20% of chapters which give you most of your marks, or it's the hardest for you. After you master those chapters, then you can go for the easy chapters. Then you can go for like the multiple choice question chapters and everything. This is how you actually get good marks, and this is how you make sure that what you cram stays in your brain and it stays there for a longer period of time, so that when you do go to sleep, which chances are you won't get that much sleep if you're cramming, you'll actually remember it for the next day's exam. So the action step is, if you're cramming right now for your exam, I want you to like list out the 2 or 3 chapters. Let's just assume there's 10 chapters, right? List the 20% of chapters, so like 2 or 3 chapters, which give you the most amount of marks or is the hardest for you. And once you do that, I want you to study that as much as possible. And then once you master that, or once you get like at least 80%, 90% confident in that, then you focus on the smaller chapters. Spend a lot of time on this. I'm sure you can manage your time well. I'm sure you can, figure out, okay, exactly how long can I study on this, and how long I need to study the smaller chapters. I know you can do this. So I just want you to list out the 3 or 4 chapters that genuinely will give you the highest like bonus. Like for the same effort, you're getting more points. So you pull the same lever, but then you get more points for that lever. In some video games, it takes the same amount of time to kill this enemy as that enemy, and the second enemy gives you more points. You want to kill this enemy because it takes the same amount of time and same effort essentially, right? Same brain power, but this enemy gives more points. These enemies are the chapters that you're trying to kill. I have more videos like this. You can go watch this right now or subscribe to my channel. My throat hurts. Bye.